basically when everybody is in the house, I have to find wherever is going to be quietest, and that's really hard to do. Hey Run Junkies, what if I told you that everything we've been talking about around rest and recovery is basically wrong? Foam rolling is pointless. Stretching does nothing. Protein drinks, that's just snake oil. Well, author and scientist Christie Aschwanden set out to answer the question, does any of this actually work? Or are we as athletes just looking for a quick fix so we can get back out running sooner and stay healthier? The result is this book, Good to Go, what the athlete in all of us can learn from the strange science of recovery. I read this book. I'm gonna let you know what I think. Aschwanden found herself at a sports recovery clinic after a particularly tough run. She was surrounded by products and services like cryotherapy, massage tools, electrical stimulation, foam rolling, all kinds of stuff. She began to wonder what recovery had actually become, because years ago, all recovery meant was that you sit down on the sofa, you watch some TV, and you rest. And it was a simple concept and widely accepted by the sports industry. Just put your feet up and rest. But now it's become this complex and competitive industry. It is an industry in and of itself, sports recovery. So you have tools and you have products and services and nutrition and super secret methodologies that you have to pay through the nose for. So Aschwanden is wondering at the validity of a lot of the claims that these products and services actually put forth. And she poses the questions, maybe are we as athletes just suckers for a good sales pitch? So in this book, she sets out to uncover the science behind a lot of these claims. She says, quote, everyone intuitively knows what recovery is and how to achieve it. And yet, we've managed to make every aspect of it vastly more complicated, expensive, and time-consuming than it was before. Now, before I dive into the review of this book directly, I want to point out the fact that she has done a lot of research. She read over 250 papers. She did a lot of this research, and this book is chock full of all of that information. So all of the studies that she did, she really did her research on. So from the first chapter, she sets out to uncover some of the science by doing a scientific study of her own, by asking the question, does a post-workout beer help with recovery? Now, I think many of us want to know the answer to that, right? But she points out the problem with this is that what we as athletes want to hear is that, yeah, of course it does. She found at the conclusion of her study that scientifically there were a lot of holes left in the data because she was questioning her own methods at the end of the day, that the sample size and the actual test on how a beer would aid in recovery, it wasn't quite right. And there were also some preconceived notions on the part of the athlete going into that study. We want the answer to be yes, and that's going to color our response to whether or not it's helping in recovery. She did say that if she were to do this study again, she would have done it very differently, which may have completely produced different results. It also led her to wonder whether or not other scientific studies would have the same flaws. What she discovered was that one scientific study doesn't really give a full picture of the scientific information. Sometimes the process or the sample size or the data collected isn't enough to give the full picture. Therefore, the people that are running the study, the scientists that are running the study, are left to fill in holes in that data by speculating. Another issue was that individual athletes are just that, or individuals with lives and attitudes and different journeys and egos, which might inadvertently skew the data in one way or another on the individual athlete. We can measure heart rate and VO2 max and lactate threshold and TSS and all of that other scientific athletic alphabet soup, but what we can't really quantify is how it feels to a person. We can't quantify that mental game. Each one of us brings something unique to the sport and to that study, and that's probably the wild card in all of this. And especially if you add in the question, so how did that feel? it's going to be a different answer for everybody. Throughout this book, Aschwanden discusses all of the different methodologies that we use in recovery practices. And what she discovers is the science is sometimes surprising. She looks at nutrition and hydration and cold therapy and sleep, overtraining, massage, and even some really strange practices like venotherapy. That's the thing, apparently. So this book is full of revelations surrounding a lot of long-held beliefs in sport and fitness in terms of the recovery practices. When she's talking about nutrition and hydration, for example, what she discovers in all of her research is that the human body is actually pretty incredible, and it will adapt to use the resources it has available to it right now. We don't need to hold to an optimized window right after a run in this all or nothing concept of getting the right macros on board in exactly that window. So she concluded that we take on good nutrition and hydration practices is more important than when we do so. We throw out equations like hard and fast rules, and while it's important to know that these are good guidelines, a good place to start, every single body is different. Each one of us is different, and we adapt in different ways, and we will use the resources available to us first and foremost. But her point was that we as athletes have kind of stopped listening to our bodies and what we really need. We are taking this equation and thinking that it's gospel, and it's really not. We're spending more time listening to what someone else is telling us, and maybe even selling us. I loved this book and the information it provides, and I found that as I get older, I spend a lot more time and energy and probably money on my recovery practices than I ever have before. Admittedly, I'll spend hours a week in my recovery practices of foam rolling and my massage gun and stretching, yoga, Epsom salts, all of those things. I just want my creaky joints to not creak so bad when I get out of bed in the morning. But after reading this book, I found permission. Permission to not rush right into the kitchen after a hard run to shove 20 to 40 grams of protein down my gullet within 30 minutes. Or that I have to drink 80 ounces of fluids every day because of some equation, some arbitrary number. Or that an ice bath, it's kind of unnecessary torture, and I don't have to put myself through that if I don't want to. Aschwanden did a fabulous job in doing the research for this book, and a lot of this kind of debunks a lot of the claims and beliefs that have been long held by coaches, and these beliefs have been passed down for a long time by coaches that have probably forgotten more about running than I will ever know. But we want to believe that those that have found success in the past, well, okay, they must be doing something right, so I'm going to keep doing what they've been doing. But when the science starts to debunk it, then maybe we start to shift our thinking around these recovery practices. We want to propagate the right beliefs and the right practices and scientifically backed information, not just long-held beliefs that no longer stand up to the science. She also discusses how athletes can taint their own data by bias and speculation, or even more, by celebrity endorsement and advertising. Remember Gatorade? We all wanted to be like Mike. Because we as athletes, even at the recreational level, we want to get better, we want to get faster, and we want to do that in a shorter period of time. So if this product over here is being used by this awesome athlete, then if I use it, then I shall be awesome too. That's how advertising works. The hard part for me with this book is the massive amount of information. It actually took me a couple of passes through this book to really let all of this sink in. It's actually going to be more of a, go-to resource for me, and I'm going to keep this thing. I read this thing with a pencil. I listened to it on audiobook on my runs, and it really is a phenomenal book, but there is so much information. ADD over here had a hard time getting all of it in the first pass. A lot of study plus a lot of humor to get the points across. Technical where it needed to be, but very informative. I also feel a little bit exposed because here on the channel I will throw out those equations or those recovery practices and those extra tools that you can buy to aid in your recovery. It's not to say they don't work. If they work for you, great. Don't stop using them because they're not scientifically proven to work. They're also not scientifically disproven to work. There's just not enough information because of the athlete bias. But I think the problem that I have is that I'm like, okay, start here with this equation and then go from there. I do kind of feel like I'm just maintaining the myth on some of this stuff. The bottom line for this book though, and the whole point that they're getting things across, is that a lot of this stuff does work to a point. Whatever recovery practices you're doing, in the end, she's like, just keep doing them. If they're not harming you, then they're probably helping you, at least mentally. If it makes you feel better after a run to do some foam rolling, then do it. But we don't have to spend a fortune on all of these tools and recovery practices. Sometimes all we really need is to sit down on the sofa and watch some TV. My recommendation is that this is a book worth reading, and especially if you are overwhelmed with all of the options for recovery tools and practices and services and all of that stuff that's out there. I will leave a link to this book in the description below. Highly worth a read. I could spend hours talking about just the content in this book. It's been fascinating. But your best bet is to check it out for yourself. I hope you learn as much as I did from Christie Aschwanden, and good to go what the athlete and all of us can learn from the strange science of recovery. My question for you today is this: have you read this book? And if you did, what did you think? Please leave thoughts, questions, comments, and suggestions in the comment section down below. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and hit that thumbs up if you like this video. Guys, thanks so much for watching. We'll see you on the next one. Remember that you have no limits. Until next time, go find your awesome, and happy running.